Hello people, and welcome to my very random video tutorial. And in this video tutorial I'll show you how to integrate Spring 3.2 framework with Hibernate 4 framework. So why did I actually decide to make this very random video? I decided to make it because because I kind of have a feeling that YouTube lacks videos which explain how to integrate Spring and Hibernate frameworks, especially when it comes to these latest versions of Spring and Hibernate. And the second reason would probably be because this integration of Spring and Hibernate frameworks is kind of very complicated and very confusing for beginners. So let's now start with this tutorial. Here in my IntelliJ IDE I created my Spring MVC project. So basically I'll show you how to integrate Spring and Hibernate on this example of Spring MVC project. So focus is not on Spring MVC itself, focus is on integration of Spring and Hibernate. So this is only possible in Ultimate version of IntelliJ IDEA, and you will go File, New Project, and you will select Spring MVC. But of course, I would be unfair if this wouldn't be possible in Eclipse. And in Eclipse, easiest way to set up your Spring MVC project is to install Spring Tool Suite plugin, and then to go like New Project, Spring Project, and Spring and to select Spring MVC, if I remember well. So here I already created my new Spring MVC project, and let's open our POM.xml file to see what dependency I also added. This dependency wasn't here. I added this dependency after I created my project. This is Spring ORM dependency. Then I also added Hibernate, Hibernate dependency, Hibernate core, which is 4.0.0 final version. Also I added my MySQL connector. So basically we'll try to map very simple Java Pojo class to MySQL database, and also added Commons pool dependency and Commons DBCP. So we will use Apache DBCP as a connection pool as a data source. Now let's open our MVC dispatcher servlet XML file. In case you use Eclipse, this file will be servlet context XML, if I remember well, but I think it's servlet context XML. So let's open MVC dispatcher servlet XML file, and let's start with defining of few beans. First bean definition I'm going to create is a data source. ID will be data source. Class will be org Apache Commons DBCP basic data source. And of course I have to set few properties. First property will be driver class name, and this will be com MySQL JDBC driver. Okay. Second property will be URL. Value will be JDBC MySQL localhost 3306, and database will be my default test database. Third property will be username. Value will be root in my case. Fourth property will be password, and value will be 1, 2, 3, 4 in my case. And the last property I'm going to add is validation query. And this basically validates our connection to MySQL database. Okay. Second bean definition will be session factory. ID session factory. Class will be org.springframework ORM. In case of Hibernate 4, of course, it will be Hibernate 4 package. And class will be local session factory bean. And here I'm going to set few properties too. First property, of course, will be data source, which will reference to our data source definition. Second property will be packages to scan, and this will, in this package we pass here, will basically store our entities which will be mapped in our test database. So let's create that package immediately, and let's call it like domain. We will put our Podger classes within this package, and it will be com spring app MVC domain. Okay, now let's create third property, and it will be Hibernate properties, then props, prop. First prop will be Hibernate dialect, value will be org Hibernate dialect, and dialect will be MySQL dialect, because we of course use MySQL database. Second prop will be Hibernate show SQL, so Hibernate framework will echo SQL statements and queries, and this will be true. And last prop will be Hibernate HBM2DDL auto, and I'll pass create here. So basically, if we pass create, and when we start our application, all existing tables will be dropped and they will be recreated. We can also pass update. In that case, Hibernate will only create tables which do not exist in our database, and in this case I'll pass create. Okay, so that should be it when it comes to configuration. Now let's create our Podger class in the domain package, and let's name it student. Let's annotate this class with entity annotation from JavaX persistence, and let's create 3 fields. First field will be ID, of course. I'll annotate that field with ID annotation. It will also be imported from JavaX persistence, and I'll say generated value to. I'll annotate it with this generated value annotation, and strategy will be generation type auto. It will be auto incrementing column. Second field will be name, for instance, and third field will be age. Great. Now let's generate getters and setters. Let's also generate constructors. Okay, that's it. Now let's actually try to run this. Hopefully I didn't make any mistake. Alright, our server started and it opened our default page, which is hello JSP, and I see that Hibernate echoed its statements, drop table if exists student, and then it created that table again. Now let's take a look in our Database Explorer. Okay, let's add new data source, MySQL data source. Database will be test, user will be root, and password will be 1234. Let's test connection. Okay, connection was successful. Let's apply that and click OK. And here it is, our student table with 3 fields, ID, age, and name. And of course it doesn't have any values still. Okay. So I have shown you what is a minimum requirement for Spring Hibernate integration. So what is minimum configuration to map a single entity in our database. But now I'll try to extend our Spring MVC project a bit. I'll actually try to insert some value in our student table. And also I'll have to define one more bean, which is transaction manager bean. And actually Hibernate transaction manager bean. And Hibernate transaction manager bean basically ensures integrity and consistency of data in our database. And I'll set one single property, which is session factory, which of course references to our previously defined session factory. And also I'll say the X annotation driven, and schema will be Spring Framework org schema tx. Okay, and I'll set transaction manager as transaction manager. This will basically enable use of transactional annotation. Okay, now let's create our persistence layer in our project. So first I'll create new package called DAO. And also I'll create new class, actually interface, student DAO, with a single method, insert. Okay, now I'll create an implementation class for this interface, student DAO IMPL, which will implement our student DAO interface. Let's implement insert method, and let's also annotate this class with repository annotation. Repository annotation is basically a specialized component annotation which indicates that this is a DAO component in our persistence layer. And now, since this is when I annotated this class with repository annotation, this basically became a Spring component, so I can use auto-wired annotation to inject my beans from MVC dispatcher servlet configuration file. And now I'll inject my session factory by using auto-wired annotation. let's annotate this. AutoWired, and of course I'll call get current session from my session factory and save or update method, and I'll pass student. Good. Now let's create our business layer, basically, or our service layer. Okay, but also let's create a bean definition for our student.npl. Class will be com, Spring App, MVC, DAO, student.npl. Okay, that should be fine. So we created our service package, and now let's also create a student service interface. And I can also create same method. Actually, let's just extend this interface with our student.DAO interface. That should do a thing. Okay, nothing else. This is enough. And also let's create implementation class for our student service, which will be student service INPL. And let's implement our student service. And let's also implement insert method. And also I'll annotate this class with service annotation, which is also specialized component annotation, which indicates that this is a basically business layer. Okay, and now I'll inject my student DAO bean. By using AutoWired annotation. Okay, and let's call this insert method, and let's pass student. Good. I'll now also create bean definition of my student service INPL. Service and student service INPL. Okay, that looks fine. Now let's open our hello controller or class. Let's close this and let's close this. Now controller is also a Spring component, so we can also use AutoWired annotation in Spring controllers. And now I'll inject my student service by using AutoWired annotation. Okay, now let's create a single method insert, which returns hello page. Request mapping will be for instance insert, and request method actually will be request method get. Okay, so basically when I enter this insert URL, it should insert me a new row in my student table, which will be, for instance, student service insert new student, which will be, for instance, John, and John's age will be 25 years. Okay, let's try to run our Tomcat server. So it opened my URL, actually my browser, and now I'll try to type in insert, and hopefully application will insert a new row in my student table. And it will throw me an error, of course, because I forgot to annotate my insert method in my student service IMPL with transactional annotation. Okay, let's stop our Tomcat server and let's rerun it. Okay, IntelliJ IDEA opened my browser again, and let's try it again. Let's pass insert URL, let's click enter. Seems like nothing happened. Now let's open our database Explorer. Here is our test database, and let's select values from our student table. And here it is, student with name John, and his age is 25. So I hope this was a bit more clear, and I hope you understood at least partially how to integrate Spring and Hibernate frameworks. So see you in my next tutorial. Bye.